HuffPost Live, I'm Josh Sepps. On topics from race and guns to sex and politics, Anthony Cumia has been entertaining people and shocking some of them for over 20 years. He co-founded and co-hosted the hit radio show Opie and Anthony, from which he was eventually fired, giving him the opportunity to start the Anthony Cumia Show, which combines news and pop culture on his own platform. Anthony is here. Thanks for being with us.
Pleasure being here. Wow, that picture of the young whippersnapper.
I know,
there.
it takes you back, huh?
Oh my God, when I hear that 20 years, I'm like, where did that go?
Does it feel like that?
Sometimes it feels like, in certain aspects, like 3 lifetimes. And in others, you think like, God, I was just like, it seems like a week ago I was doing radio in Boston. So
yeah.
It is odd, yeah.
Is it nice now not having a big corporate entity overseeing what you say?
As far as seeing overseeing what I'm saying, I love it. I love that there's no corporate entity there. The safety net of a corporate entity, the lack of fear that you are your own master, there is a certain bit of apprehension and anxiety that goes along with running your own deal, even though it does give you more freedom.
And yet the security can be illusory. I mean, as you found out, right? I mean, you feel great until all of a sudden they say, see ya.
You know, when you're beholden to a company, a board of directors, sponsors, things like that, regardless of what they tell you about how much freedom you are given, there are lines and limits, and if you do step over them, you will get spanked, as they say.
So explain the new show to people who are unfamiliar with it yet.
It's a very new type of medium. Technology has opened up podcasting to everybody. I wanted to take it to another level, HD video. From my own house, which is odd. Sometimes, as you see on the video roll, it's out in my backyard. It's in my bar area. It's in the actual studio. So the house is my set. I could go anywhere in there. But content-wise, I love the fact that I can talk about anything. We always talk about wanting open and honest discussions about so many controversial topics or funny topics, whatever. But a lot of times that isn't what we want. We want people to comply with our ideology, and we want to hear familiar rants on TV. I don't think a lot of people tune in to MSNBC to hear conservative views, or Fox to hear liberal views. A lot of people watch what they want to watch, and I like the idea that it's open, honest, guests that don't agree with me, to open up spirited debate. That's, I think, where we're headed with a lot of people getting into their own shows and doing their own shows, and I think that's a great thing.
I mean, obviously, when an ordinary person starts up their own show, they have to build an audience. You had a pre-existing audience from...
Yes.
So, like, all of this talk about, like, how now anyone can do it. Anyone can start up their own YouTube channil. Yeah, they can,
yeah.
But it helps if you're already Anthony Cumia with millions of listeners on satellite radio, and then you can go away. How many came across? Were you surprised or displeased by
I was very happy about it. Actually, Adam Carolla said something very funny. He's got a very popular show.
He was here 2 days ago.
Was he?
Yeah.
He's great. I like him a lot.
Yeah, me too.
He said, yeah, well, the first thing you have to do is be famous, which I thought was really funny, because if you are a startup, yeah, you need that initial audience, and that's why we wanted to get up and running so quickly after my departure from SiriusXM satellite radio. I wanted to keep those people that were fans of the program for so long and not have them go elsewhere. So yeah, we started it up, and a lot of people came over. I was very pleasantly surprised, and still very happy with the growth and where the show's headed.
And one reason you're able to set it up so quickly is because you've got a pretty sophisticated technical setup at your house, right? You tease yourself about being like, oh, it's from my basement, but you've got a green screen, you've got like all these complicated effects that you're able to do. It looks quite professional for something coming out of your house. Why did you have that as like a bomb shelter just in case this would happen?
I've used that analogy.
Your insurance policy?
Yes, I've used that analogy before. It was kind of like a hobby to me. I've always loved broadcasting, and especially video broadcasting, the effects, green screening. I've always been into After Effects, a program where it's like Photoshop for video.
Yep.
And I found that a lot of fun. So I slowly through trial and error, built this studio in my house. And when push came to shove and I needed to do a show, I couldn't have been happier that I didn't have to sit there and build a studio. We had to figure out the logistics of getting the show out to the people as quickly as possible, but at least I didn't have to sit and buy cameras and figure out how things worked. We were able to put a staff in very quickly and get up and running in a month, which was
dig your well before you're thirsty, as they say. You must have been relieved, like, well, I'm glad I poured all that money into my little bunker.
Yeah, it reminded me of that Twilight Zone where they made fun of the guy that built the bomb shelter, and then when the alerts came in, they're all banging on his door. Help us!
Yeah, we put out a call on Twitter for people who want to ask you questions.
Sure.
Obviously, there are a bazillion. One of them, who is Anthony's favourite, the Anthony Cumia Show guest so far, and why is it at Jim
Norton, yes.
Melissa Ann asked.
Jimmy is fantastic. Of course, I worked with Jimmy on the Opie and Anthony Show for many years, and we're really good friends. I find him to be one of the funniest people I know. And when he's on, it's so natural. You don't feel like it's an interview. You don't feel like you need to prepare questions for Jimmy. He can and will talk about anything. Our lives pretty much, when there aren't many stories during the day to talk about on a radio show, you will just rip yourself open and let everything out. And me and Jimmy, especially Jimmy, have never been shy about that. And it makes fun radio. I think it endears you to the people because it's like, yes, this is me. This is why I'm the way I am. This is, my upbringing. And Jimmy is one of the best at making that funny and entertaining.
It's an incredibly intimate medium, isn't it? I mean, I think they've done studies about how close people feel to various celebrities, and people feel closer to radio people than they do to television people or anyone else. They feel like they know you. Yeah,
when you, like I said, when it's those slow days, you have to fill airtime, you will talk about yourself and get very personal. I've had people knock on my door, just knock on my door wanting to have a beer and hang out.
It's kind of creepy.
It is very creepy. But I had two solutions. I could have chased him away and not known who he was, what his motives were, if he was nuts, or I could have invited him for the beer and said, okay, and ask him questions. Hey, what do you do? Where do you live? What's your name? I opted for the second. And it turned out he's just some guy from Long Island with a family, and he now is a fan of the show and calls in every so often. I always tease him like, oh, you're that guy that dropped by my house.
See, the dangerous thing there is, what if he wants the interaction to be longer than you do? Then now he's there.
Yeah.
What if it's next Tuesday and he's still on the couch? You're like, I think the beer is done.
Believe me, that isn't an if. I have situations at my house where people drop in and don't leave. I have a few rooms in my house where doors have opened in the afternoon and people have walked out and been like, oh man, that was great. What a fun night. And what are you doing here in my house?
It's Thursday. The party started on Saturday.
It's done. It's quite interesting around the compound, as I like to call it.
Another question on Twitter from Roger. What are your dream guests and shows for the show / network? Yeah, are you basically building a network? Because you've got an additional podcast.
Yeah, we signed on Legion of Skanks, who are a great bunch of comics who've done a show for a while now. Very popular, very funny. They fit the format of our network very well. Other guys that we're talking to now, also very similar fit. I think the people that subscribe to the channel would be and will be very happy to know that that's happening. Yeah, the goal is to build a network, constant programming. The goal would be 24-hour programming, but we're working on it, building it, not just grabbing anybody just to fill time. It really has to be a nice fit on the platform.
This is a moment in time when, obviously, for the first time ever, really, that's possible. I mean, there's now, with people getting so many shows, and some really good shows on Netflix and Amazon Prime and so on, that are being made specifically for the internet. We've got what we're doing here, where it's all exclusively online. Do you see an imminent future in which the idea of sitting down in front of a network television and turning on, a channel and just watching whatever is on is actually obsolete?
It is in my house already. I find it odd how slowly that transfer takes place. There is no reason to be a slave to networks and, hey, we put this on at this time and this is when you're supposed to watch this. And The technology's there, the different platforms are there, like Netflix and Hulu and Amazon. If I want to watch something, there have been times I've come across something on regular television that's on, and just gone to Netflix to rent it because I don't want to watch it on regular television.
What, just on principle or because of ads?
Because of ads sometimes, but also if you miss the beginning of it,
Yeah.
like, I'll just watch it on that. I want to be, we're in a time now where we really have a lot more options out there. So you have to do something entertaining, something that's going to grab the people, something unique, new, and original.
Random questions on Twitter. Jar asks, how would Anthony describe the current crime situation in American cities right now?
I don't know. I think people are scared in the inner cities. I don't think they know what to do about it. I think at times we reach a level of political correctness where people don't really want to address issues. Again, open and honest discussions about things like crime, race, police, community interactions. People don't want honest discussions. They want yes men. They want to be able to put their opinion across without any dissenting opinions, and we end up getting nothing done. So I really think real honest dialogue is the answer to a lot of problems that are going on today, but people are just so scared to talk. There's a fear now where people bring up the First Amendment constantly, and that is given to us. But there's this secondary infringement on our freedom of speech, and it's a cloud of fear that is over so many people because of the consequences of free speech. And I'll elaborate on that because people say, well, there is consequence to speech. I think it should be rebuttal and argument and debate and not exile and destruction of reputation, family, job, things like that. I believe any speech should be tolerated because it can be debated. You can make it look stupid. Make the person look silly. Make the person look uninformed, ignorant. That should be the rebuttal to speech you aren't happy with.
But should there be no corporate repercussions? I mean, what if there was a Ku Klux Klan member spouting off or something?
Absolutely. That is the consequence. But you can pick extremes. And obviously people will agree, yes, a corporation does not want a Klansman working for them, representing their company. But there's a huge gray area in between where it is just opinion. It's people talking about very sensitive issues: sexuality, misogyny, homophobia, Islamophobia. So many things that people are just plain petrified to talk about, not represent, not I am a member of the Klan or I'm a member of ISIS or that. But even discussing those topics is so taboo now that we're getting nowhere.
I want to pick you up in the interest of rebuttal on one thing that you included in your answer there, which is you said people are afraid of crime in inner cities. And a lot of black Americans feel like inner city is a code word for black people. Like they'll say, what inner city? Like Chelsea? You know,
right.
What are you talking about? Are you talking about the village? Inner city is a code word for African-American ghetto or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, there happens to be a lot of code words nowadays where, I think thug was the latest one that got some heat on some of the network news channels. That was a code word. You know what that means? It's like, if we're going to just argue semantics, again, we're not going to get to the root of a problem, an issue, and really discuss it open and honestly. Let's not kibitz? Is it kibitz the word?
Oh, you're putting my half Jewishness to shame by the fact that I don't know.
But I mean, sitting there and
Kvetch, maybe?
Maybe that's it. And just wasting time on words and semantics and what this supposedly means, and that dive in. Get to the root, discuss these things.
Right, I take your point, but isn't it true that embedded in our discourse are a whole bunch of things that we take for granted and that might support, I guess, a power structure that goes unanalyzed ordinarily? So when we throw around words like thugs and inner city and so on, well, we don't actually realize that we're playing into a status quo that deserves to be questioned? Or is it, I mean, isn't there a value in some semantics? We don't call women toots anymore. We don't, there are certain, we evolve you know.
Yeah, but I think if you're spending so much time on these words, and these words come about because other words are taken away. So many words are becoming so people are so overly sensitive of the words, like transgender. What do you say? It used to be fine to say tranny. It sounded fun. It sounded like a nice word.
Did it used to be fine for the transsexuals and the transgender?
But then all of a sudden that changes, and it just.
But maybe we just didn't know that it wasn't fine because we're white dudes.
I think a lot of times, though, the words change to give power to a group that feels powerless. And the only true power you have is to bully another group into not using your words. And again, to me, it seems like a waste of time and resources that could better be spent honestly discussing something. Hurting feelings? Sure. A lot of times big problems and real solutions aren't it isn't the smoothest road, and people will be upset. Comedy in itself, I've noticed, has a lot of people upset. And it's, jokes. They're jokes. They're meant to offend at times, be funny. We've lost context, I think, in 2015.
Another question online. Alex Gasky asks, ask Anthony Cumia if Sirius offered his job back starting Monday, same pay and terms as before, would he drop everything and go back?
No, I would not. If you asked me that right after I was let go, I might have a different answer. I'm very excited about what I'm doing, and as the past year has gone by, just about, I've seen so many changes in the industry where we are at the forefront of it. I didn't know at the time. Like I said, there was a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear in, will this work? Can this model work? And it is, and I'm seeing this technology and the choices that people have and the opportunity that I have to put on this type of show is at the forefront of what people are doing. It's a lot of fun. It's exciting, still scary, but I love it.
On this question of censorship and corporate speech and being fired, I just want to take a look at a couple of. So, do you want to just tell us roughly? You've been over this a bazillion times. What happened, just in layman's terms?
Oh yeah, well, I was in Times Square very late at night. I was assaulted by a woman that was walking down the street as I was taking pictures, not of her, but of Times Square. She turned around, didn't like it, smacked me in the face a few times, and I voiced my displeasure with that on Twitter and added, probably not the best idea at the time, I also added in some social commentary with my
yeah, you were furious and you've just been assaulted.
Around
I just want to take a look at two tweets that got you in trouble. You tweeted, there's a deep-seated problem with violence in the black community. Try to address it and you'll be exiled to Racistville, but it's real. And it's really open season on white people in this day and age. No recourse. Fight back and you're a racist. The predators know this. Good luck.
That is true. I still look at that, and that what I get in trouble for a lot is you're condemning a whole group, you're wide brush. Nothing in either of those tweets is saying that all people. I'm never saying all people. There is a problem. Am I wrong in saying there is a problem with violence in the black community? If I would say that right now into that camera, am I saying anything that community leaders, preachers, politicians, and in inner cities haven't been saying for years? Is there a problem with violence? Is there?
Are you asking me, or is that rhetorical? I don't know. I'm not the one tweeting about it.
But you're very up to date on the news and what goes on and statistics and whatnot. Do you think there's a problem, a disproportionate problem with violence in the black community, regardless of the reason? I'm not saying the reasoning, whether it's poverty,
that's where it comes in,
it's feeling oppressed or anything. I understand.
Yeah.
But I just stated that there is a problem with violence in a community. Why is that so taboo to say?
Well, it's a bit like because people take it out of context or don't understand the context, maybe your context is wrong. I mean, I don't know. But if you said something like there is a problem of suicide in the gay community,
okay,
there is,
it would
but
be
that
true.
Ignores why, right? It's almost like you're blaming the victim in some way.
But well, no, I would say that the problem needs to be addressed. and the second you bring it up, you're a problem. That's all I said.
Here's what's interesting, because I don't want to rehash this forever, and I don't want to make you feel awkward or anything.
It is not that insane to say what I said.
And you've been speaking freely on the air about such things for a very long time. Yesterday, by total coincidence, Jim Brewer was on the show, and I mentioned that you were going to be here, and he had a pretty interesting take on the situation because I raised you. Just take a look at what Jim had to say. Mm-hmm. That doesn't sound like you're saying that he shouldn't have gotten fired. It sounds like you're saying he should have got fired, but not for that.
Yes. I mean, I get he should have got fired, but what I'm saying is, were people not listening to the show? Were they not watching him for 10, 15 years?
No, not the outrage brigade on Twitter. They don't. You know, they just see it, and then someone tweets it to them, and they probably don't even know who he is. They're like, this man has to be destroyed.
And I guess so, but I tell you, that I was confused only because, how do you not know Anthony?
With friends like that, who needs enemies? He's basically saying you should have been fired for other stuff.
Yeah, I know Jim very well. I love the guy. I would take that more as not I should have been fired beforehand, but if they were going to fire me, they should have a lot earlier based on what I would say on the air than a tweet on my own time after I was assaulted on the street. I mean, honestly, but you know. Jim smoked a lot of pot in his day. So
he claims that he just looks like that. He claims that he just always looks like that.
I bet he doesn't now. I mean, he's a responsible dad and a great guy, but he had, in the past, smoked a lot of pot.
I don't know if you saw this. Chris Pratt, the actor, put on Facebook something that's relevant to this conversation, which is sort of a satire of the media and the Twitterverse's instant outrage machine. This is what he wrote on Facebook. I want to make a heartfelt apology for whatever it is I end up accidentally saying during the forthcoming Jurassic World press tour. I hope you understand it was never my intention to offend anyone, and I'm truly sorry. I swear I'm the nicest guy in the world, and I fully regret what I accidentally will have said in the upcoming foreign and domestic interviews.
Oh, that is fantastic. A preemptive
apology. Yeah.
That is where we're headed. I think people are getting very fatigued at this, apology after the rigmarole that you'll get on Twitter because of something you said. A lot of the things that are getting heat from people mean nothing. I mean, they aren't offensive. They are taken so far out of context. We've lost context, and I honestly believe that when you look years ago at something maybe George Carlin says and then something Walter Cronkite said, it was given context. You realize that two people, Walter Cronkite would not get on the news at night and say what Richard Pryor was saying or George Carlin was saying. Now it's all the same. We are all put in the same bin where if we say anything, regardless of where we are saying it, when we're saying it, if we're saying it in private, alleged privacy, we are all put in the same bin of, wow, you said that, regardless of why, how, who, when. It's just bad.
So there's obviously a spectrum, right? I mean, you know, on the one hand, there are things that where the internet will just pick a sacrificial lamb and just go at it because there are people, and I've been at the sad end of them, who will just willfully misinterpret what it is that you're saying because they are professional umbrage takers, I call it. Like they are professional, they just take umbrage at everything.
Sure.
But then at the other end, there are also people who are spouting a lot of racist or misogynistic or homophobic nonsense and who deserve to be piled on a bit and shouldn't be allowed to get away with it in a civilized society. So at what point do we make sure that we don't end up with those people kind of tainting the pool? And we don't want to get to an area in which every privileged white straight guy is able to say, oh, you just dismiss all criticism of me because of these crazy people over there who get angry about everything.
I think just like real life, common sense should dictate our own ethics and morals and should dictate what we accept and what we condemn. Not one group, not one person, not a website that it bases itself on outing people's horrific opinions on things that they deem horrific. Common sense. I mean, obviously, if you get somebody that's literally hating people to the point where they want to see harm done to them, we can all agree that that's awful and should not be acknowledged, should be blocked, whatever. But if someone has a valid opinion on something, we shouldn't just take it because you don't like it, you don't want to hear it anymore. That's not at all what this freedom of speech that we're all saying we should have is all about.
Another question, Paleo View says, have you ever done or considered stand-up comedy?
That is frightening to me. I did it once, and I think I got lucky. It was up in Canada at the Montreal Comedy Festival, and I was told I was going to intro the show. And Colin Quinn was there, Rich Voss, Jim Norton, like heavy hitters, my comic, heroes that I love. And I was told I was just going to go up and intro the show. I ended up having to host the show, go up in between each comic, do a little something, start the show out. And I was petrified. But after a few Captain and Cokes and things like that, I loosened up a bit. And I got lucky, I think. But the thought of going up on a stage by yourself with just a microphone and looking at a crowd and saying, okay, make me, laugh, is frightening to me. No,
Yeah.
I shan't do that.
And lastly on Twitter, Kurt Rogers says, how did he put up with Opie for all those years?
Me and Opie, obviously a 20-year relationship on the air. Anybody together for 20 years are going to butt heads, have personality quirks that the other doesn't like. I mean, believe me, I know I was no treat to work with either. But we saw that it was a great combination. It made for a great show. And, we over the years have had our issues with each other. I think we voiced them, both sides, a couple of months back. Finally had a little blowout on the air and talked about, some of the pressures of being a team for that long. I wish him the best. He's got one of the best guys sitting there with him, Jim Norton. And, I'm very excited to go forward with the Anthony Cumia Show and try something in a brand new medium like this.
Anthony, great to talk to you. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Thank you so much, man.
Wonderful to have you.
Very cool.
The Anthony Cumia Show streams live to subscribers Monday through Thursday from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern. You can check out the show as well as past episodes at anthonycumia.com. That link and more are in our resource well below. Stay with us. More conversations coming up right here on HuffPost Live. He was here 2 days ago.
Was he?
Yeah.
He's great. I like him a lot.
Yeah, me too.
He said, yeah, well, the first thing you have to do is be famous, which I thought was really funny because if you are a startup, you need that initial audience. And that's why we wanted to get up and running so quickly after my departure from SiriusXM Satellite Radio. I wanted to keep those people that were fans of the program for so long and not have them go elsewhere. So, yeah, we started it up, and a lot of people came over. I was very pleasantly surprised and still very happy with the growth and where the show's headed.
And one reason you're able to set it up so quickly is because you've got a pretty sophisticated technical setup at your house, right? You tease yourself about being like, oh, it's from my basement, but you've got a green screen, you've got like all these complicated effects that you're able to do. It looks quite professional for something coming out of your house. Why did you have that as like a bomb shelter just in case this would happen?
I've used that analogy.
Your insurance policy?
Yes, I've used that analogy before. It was kind of like a hobby to me. I've always loved broadcasting, and especially video broadcasting, the effects, green screening. I've always been into After Effects, a program where it's like Photoshop for video.
Yep.
And I found that a lot of fun. So I slowly, through trial and error, built this studio in my house. And when push came to shove and I needed to do a show, I couldn't have been happier that I didn't have to sit there and build a studio. We had to figure out the logistics of getting the show out to the people as quickly as possible, but at least I didn't have to sit and buy cameras and figure out how things worked. We were able to put a staff in very quickly and get up and running in a month, which was
dig your well before you're thirsty, as they say. You must have been relieved, like, well, I'm glad I poured all that money into my little bunker.
Yeah, it reminded me of that Twilight Zone where they made fun of the guy that built the bomb shelter, and then when the alerts came in, they're all banging on his door, help us.
Yeah, we put out a call on Twitter for people who want to ask you questions.
Sure.
Obviously, there are a bazillion. One of them, who is Anthony's favorite, the Anthony Cumia Show guest so far, and why is it at Jim
Norton, yes.
Melissa Ann asked.
Jimmy is fantastic. Of course, I worked with Jimmy on the Opie and Anthony Show for many years, and we're really good friends. I find him to be one of the funniest people I know. And when he's on, it's so natural. You don't feel like it's an interview. You don't feel like you need to prepare questions for Jimmy. He can and will talk about anything. Our lives pretty much, when there aren't many stories during the day to talk about on a radio show, you will just rip yourself open and let everything out. And me and Jimmy, especially Jimmy, have never been shy about that. And it makes fun radio. I think it endears you to the people because it's like, yes, this is me. This is why I'm the way I am. This is, my upbringing. And Jimmy is one of the best at making that funny and entertaining.
It's an incredibly intimate medium, isn't it? I mean, I think they've done studies about how close people feel to various celebrities, and people feel closer to radio people than they do to television people or anyone else. They feel like they know you. Yeah,
when you, like I said, when it's those slow days, you have to fill airtime, you will talk about yourself and get very personal. I've had people knock on my door, just knock on my door wanting to have a beat. It's a very new type of medium. Technology has opened up podcasting to everybody. I wanted to take it to another level, HD video from my own house, which is odd. Sometimes, as you see on the video roll, it's out in my backyard. It's in my bar area. It's in the actual studio. So the house is my set. I could go anywhere in there. But content-wise, I love the fact that I can talk about anything. We always talk about wanting open and honest discussions about so many controversial topics or funny topics, whatever. But a lot of times that isn't what we want. We want people to comply with our ideology, and we want to hear familiar rants on TV. I don't think a lot of people tune in to MSNBC to hear conservative views, or Fox to hear liberal views. A lot of people watch what they want to watch, and I like the idea that it's open, honest, guests that don't agree with me, to open up spirited debate. That's, I think, where we're headed with a lot of people getting into their own shows and doing their own shows, and I think that's a great thing.
I mean, obviously, when an ordinary person starts up their own show, they have to build an audience. You had a pre-existing audience from...
Yes.
So, like, all of this talk about, like, how now anyone can do it. Anyone can start up their own YouTube channel. Yeah, they can, but it helps if you're already Anthony Cumia with millions of listeners on satellite radio, and then you can go away. How many came across? Were you surprised or displeased
I was very happy about it. Actually, Adam Carolla said something very funny. He's got a very popular show here. And hang out.
It's kind of creepy.
It is very creepy. But I had two solutions. I could have chased him away and not known who he was, what his motives were, if he was nuts, or I could have invited him for the beer and said, okay, and ask him questions. Hey, what do you do? Where do you live? What's your name? I opted for the second. And it turned out he's just some guy from Long Island with a family, and he now is a fan of the show and calls in every so often. I always tease him like, oh, you're that guy that dropped by my house.
See, the dangerous thing there is, what if he wants the interaction to be longer than you do? Then now he's there.
Yeah.
What if it's next Tuesday and he's still on the couch? You're like, I think the beer is done.
Believe me, that isn't an if. I have situations at my house where people drop in and don't leave. I have a few rooms in my house where doors have opened in the afternoon and people have walked out and been like, oh man, that was great. What a fun night. And what are you doing here in my
It's
house?
Thursday. The party started on Saturday.
It's done. It's quite interesting around the compound, as I like to call it.
Another question on Twitter from Roger. What are your dream guests and shows for the show / network? Yeah, are you basically building a network? Because you've got an additional podcast.
Yeah, we signed on Legion of Skanks, who are a great bunch of comics who've done a show for a while now. Very popular, very funny. They fit the format of our network very well. Other guys that we're talking to now, also very similar fit. I think the people that subscribe to
HuffPost Live, I'm Josh Steps. On topics from race and guns to sex and politics, Anthony Cumia has been entertaining people, and shocking some of them, for over 20 years. He co-founded and co-hosted the hit radio show Opie and Anthony, from which he was eventually fired, giving him the opportunity to start The Anthony Cumia Show, which combines news and pop culture on his own platform. Anthony is here. Thanks for being with us.
Pleasure being here. Wow, that picture of the young whippersnapper.
I know,
there.
it takes you back,
oh
huh?
my God, when I hear that 20 years, I'm like, where did that go?
Does it feel like that?
Sometimes it feels like, in certain aspects, like 3 lifetimes, and in others, you think like, God, I was just like, it seems like a week ago I was doing radio in Boston. So
Yeah.
it is odd, yeah.
Is it nice now not having a big corporate entity overseeing what you say?
As far as overseeing what I'm saying, I love it. I love that there's no corporate entity there. The safety net of a corporate entity, the lack of fear that you are your own master, there is a certain bit of apprehension and anxiety that goes along with running your own deal, even though it does give you more freedom.
And yet the security can be illusory. I mean, as you found out, right? I mean, you feel great until all of a sudden they say, see ya.
You know, when you're beholden to a company, a board of directors, sponsors, things like that, regardless of what they tell you about how much freedom you are given, there are lines and limits, and if you do step over them, you will get spanked, as they say.
So explain the new show to people who are unfamiliar with it yet.
It's